Hey, welcome guys. Today we're going to be finishing up our Tiger 1, and that is from Takom. This is their kit that comes with the Zimmerit molded on. And so my goal for this was to... Originally I wanted to weather it a lot, to be honest. In building the kit, painting it, and then starting to weather it, there are a lot of fragile pieces on this kit. Small pieces that, some of them got broken off multiple times. So my goal eventually then shifted towards, make it look weathered, but let's not overdo it and let's keep things more or less somewhat simple. Surprisingly, the antennas were never broken off. I'm very proud of that. I assumed I was going to break them off multiple times, but somehow avoided that catastrophe. So let's flip it over to the bench and let's see how we weather this kit up. All right, so I wanted to do something a little bit differently here. The two enamel washes that you see is what I originally reached for, and I don't know, we all probably have this habit, but kind of do the same thing over and over. And so this is just going to be for the purpose of changing things up, trying something different, and seeing what the results are like. Part of why I wanted to do this was I started weathering with the enamel washes that you see, and I wanted to, do a panel line wash in the Zimmerit, but because of the camouflage pattern and just the ability for the washes to flow, they were spilling over, and they are slightly different color. So I decided to go with something that was a little bit different. It's this Starship wash. This oil brusher from Ammo by Mig, and obviously we're going to use that enamel odorless thinner there, and we're going to create our own wash. So these Ammo by Mig oil brushers they're really amazing, and I feel as though I've only really scratched the surface with them on how you can use them, what you can use them for, and everything like that. I had actually not used them for a pin wash yet, so I figured, why not, right? I have all this stuff. I'm a little bit of a gear junkie, no matter what I do. So this was about getting it to the right consistency. And obviously being a wash, it's at least 80% thinner. You just want it to be able to have that capillary action and flow everywhere. And to be honest, I wasn't sure how I thought it was going at first, but again, I just figured we'll stick with it. And ultimately, I do think it looked really good here in the panel lines, on the, not the mold seams, I'm losing the word here, the weld seams. Not sure how it looked in the dots, but overall I was kind of, maybe 60-40. I liked it, but maybe there was something I could have done differently. But I decided, hey, let's stick it out and let's see how it looks in the whole kit. And so the positive thing is oils are extremely easy to work with. I guess the negative thing is when you are cleaning them up, they look like they are coming off, and it looks like it's clean, but then when the thinner dries, you're left with kind of a haziness. If you've ever seen anyone do kind of like the dot filter, you put a bunch of different colored dots on, I'm sure you have, it leaves that hazy tone over the kit. And overall, that was great. There were a couple spots that, I wish maybe, I guess I was a little bit more careful applying it. But overall, again, I think it went well. And we applied it to every single surface other than really the metal on the kit, the tracks, wood, things like that. We put it on all of the dark yellow and that NATO green that I use for the camo. Now I went back, and this is the dried product. As you see, it actually dried very nicely in the Zimmerit, I think at least. It wasn't as pronounced as when it was initially put on, and it really did bring out the detail in the Zimmerit. Where I think maybe, again, it could have been a little bit better around like the box and things. I did lose a little bit of touch, I think, with cleaning it up. It's just, it's much easier to clean this color up on the dark yellow. Is really what I think it is. And you'll notice as this video goes, it was much harder to clean up, as you can see there on the green. That's that kind of haze that I was talking about. But anyways, enough on the pin wash. We're moving on to doing our wood wash, and because of the logs on the side of this kit, we have a pretty good amount of wood that we have to, make look just not so bland. So this is AK Interactive's wood wash, and it's been something that I've been trying to kind of master. I'll say, and it's definitely more difficult on the tools. It's much easier on the logs, and so we're just going to start with really a sludge wash here. And this is a thicker wash than something like a panel line or a pin wash. If you haven't used it, I think it's very, very good. It's just a little bit, if you don't get it right, you can wipe it off and start again. And I think I'm probably a little hesitant to do that and should probably do that a little bit more. But we're going to put that wash on, and we are going to let that dry while we, not for too long, but while we get some washes on some other pieces here. So this is just a dark brown wash, kind of like a dirt colored, but also still dark enough to highlight the seams and things on these. They're not stowage, but for lack of better terms, I guess accessories that come with this kit. These spare road wheels and this tarp, the tarp on top. And we're again just going to sludge wash those, let that wash kind of, fill those cracks and those seams. But also the way we're going to take it off, we're going to use it to get an additional color into those. So we'll let that dry for a little bit as well. I don't like to take washes off right away, not always at least. So in the meantime, we're going to use this track wash. And we're basically, again, we're just going to sludge wash the tracks. Now this wash I will not remove. I wanted to do something very, very simple on these tracks because if you watched my previous videos, they weren't fun to put together. These are the T-Rex Tiger 1 tracks that I got because I had heard the tracks that came in this kit were difficult, and I had, 40 to 60 pins fall out. I got a lot of them back in, some of them I lost, and after a while it was like, all right, just don't tip the tank sideways. And yeah. Anyways, time to take off the wood wash. And basically, we're not going to use a Q-tip this time because I have found the Q-tip's a little bit too aggressive for this application. So we're just going to take a brush. It's not dipped in thinner. You don't really need it to. If this wash is only drying for maybe 30 minutes to an hour, you can just take a brush and just wipe this wash around until you get what looks like a pretty good wood grain texture. It's not perfect, but I think it's good enough. Especially those tools are going to get more or less covered up by the turret. So then we'll move on to getting the wash off of our tarps here. And that we're just going to do with the method I like the most, which is, again, just a Q-tip. There's enough thinner left in these washes, even after they've dried for an hour, that you don't need to put anything on the Q-tip. Just pretty much start wiping it off until you get that desired effect. And I don't want to leave piled up wash anywhere here. I'm trying to obviously accentuate the detail, but get just another color in there because we're going to come back and dry brush the highlights later. So there's a pretty good example. We definitely want to get it off the highlights, but we don't want to leave so much on that it looks like cartoonish, if that makes sense. And then it's time to weather the logs, and I started with a Q-tip. The downside of the Q-tip here is you can't obviously reach into kind of the cracks and crevices where the log meets the tank, but because we did a sludge wash on here, it is very, very thick. And so I'm just going to do a quick pass with the Q-tip to, get, let's say, 80% of the wash off of the logs. Once we have that wash off, this is like my utility brush. It's just an old Ammo by MIG brush that I have ruined by weathering tracks and things like this. And so the bristles, as you can see, are, spread out, and it's just a stiff brush at this point. And this I found was very good for just spreading this wash around, removing some of it, and getting into those cracks and crevices and just giving it that wood grain texture. Then we'll move on to chipping now that we have pretty much all of our initial washes off. And I know I've said it a million times that I don't like sponge chipping, but this is a huge kit. It's a tiger, and I just wasn't in the mood for chipping with a small brush. And with sponge chipping, you can chip a huge vehicle like this, and I don't know, it feels like 10 minutes. It's probably more like 20 or 30, but it won't take you like an entire modeling session. So I chose to give sponge chipping another try, and we'll see how it looks in the end. But it's definitely a really good method if you're trying to just, get through it and come out on the other side and move on to the next step. So I've tried all sorts of different sponges. This is just a household, cheap sponge I got from the grocery store, and just, ripped it up until it was somewhat uniform. But obviously, the goal is that you want it to be uneven. Moisten the sponge with paint and then dry it on a paper towel. This is just like dry brushing. Same exact idea. And then what you're left with is just paint on the inside of the sponge, a little bit of dried paint on the outside. So when you highlight those areas, you get not too much, right? And then I'm just going to dry brush kind of sporadically in the wheels. I know I'm going to cover them with like mud and stuff, so I'm not going to go too crazy here, just to get a little bit of, initial, I guess, brownish color mixed into the wheels. Once I have that done, I'm going to do some streaking effects, and I chose to go with this winter grime color just simply because it was very similar. It's obviously grayer, but it's very similar to the that Starship Filth color that we used. And so once we have it kind of painted on, it doesn't need to be honestly all that perfect. You just need to get the basic, get the paint down. And then once you get it down, if you've watched my other videos, this is always how I do my streaking effects. Kind of start at the bottom and work your way up, always brushing in that, I call it a gravitational direction, like a downward direction, until you see that those streaks are, as thin as you want them and honestly as straight as you want them. And so this is one of those, it's kind of like a W-shaped brush. So not all the bristles are the same length. And that's going to avoid kind of pulling all of the wash off the kit here. And so we're just going to do that on a couple vertical surfaces. I stayed away from the Zimmerit with this, I think for obvious reasons. I didn't know how it would work. I don't think it would work with the Zimmerit, so I just didn't even attempt. I just really targeted big flat areas that I kind of wanted to change the tone of the paint a little bit and just get a little bit more interest. So did the side skirts as well, and as you can see, I didn't really follow any sort of pattern. I just got the paint down, and by doing one big pass down the vehicle, it's going to spread that wash out, and you're going to get that kind of oil brush dot filter streaking effect that at least I was looking for. And this was about the point that I said, well, I had all these plans of weathering this vehicle, and I wanted to do a lot with it, but maybe I need to go lighter with it, just because pieces started breaking off. The little clamps that hold the tow cables never fit well in this kit. They barely touch. Those kept breaking off. The handle on the jack, I don't know, broke off 10 different times, it felt like. So I went really, really light with the stippling here, and that's with the enamel liquid wash that I use from AK on basically every kit. It's a really, really nice product. It's super thin and therefore really good for this effect. But I used 3 different colors: dark mud, dry mud, and European earth. And so you can see the effect is really, really light, but it does look like there were some splashes and things like that. Once we have that done, and you want to make sure your enamel wash is really, really dry. So this is probably like at least a couple days, if not a week later. We're going to come back and we're going to dry brush our 2 tarps. And so I just used the same, it was like US Field Drab that I used for this, I think. Just basically use that, a couple drops of white, and we're just going to highlight and dry brush those details. And so, of course, we're highlighting the details, as I said, but the other goal of this is to just get another color on those tarps, just so they're not, one singular color. They are a really, really nice addition to the kit. The one that I'm dry brushing here with the road wheels, it fits pretty well. If you look at it from the opposite angle that I'm showing, there is a little bit of gap, but ultimately it's a really, really nice addition that Takom gave us with this kit. I haven't really seen any stowage that looks like that, at least not that comes out of the box. So really, really cool that we got that. Now I'm going to come in with, this is the dried mud, and we're just going to brush. This is that enamel liquid, pigment wash, and we're basically just going to do a, pretty large wash on all of the tracks and the wheels. Now this is a self-fixing product. Sometimes you have to do touch-ups. So I do come back and do a touch-up on some, kind of empty spots or spots where it didn't self-level very well. But for the most part, there are times where you can put this product on and in one go, it's just perfect. It's really, really good for the tracks if you're not trying to weather them very much, because again, it's self-leveling and it just kind of does its own thing. So you don't really have to go too crazy. You won't get that sort of, volume that you get from a regular pigment, but because things were starting to fall off and the tracks were just so fragile, I just wanted to do as little touching of them as possible. Then we're going to come in and we're going to use, this is an oil brusher. Again, this is the rust color. And I didn't want to make the vehicle look rusty, but I wanted to just get another color in there. And so obviously it will act as kind of a base rust color, but I'm not going to do any other, rust effects in these areas. I'm simply just going to get kind of a dirty, rusty tone to a couple different parts and kind of break up, even though it's two-tone, break up some of the monotony in some of these areas. And so once we have those kind of red dots put down, I'm going to dunk my brush in a healthy amount of enamel odorless thinner and just kind of brush it back into itself. What that's going to do is really 2 things. As soon as the odorless thinner touches it, it's going to act as kind of like you're making a wash on the vehicle. So it's going to spread it out naturally in some of those seam lines and things. But then also, if you were to brush this out, it's an oil paint. It will go forever, and you'll just keep brushing it out, and you'll be left with this big mess. So always, at least in my opinion, try to brush it back into itself and contain. This is like containing the mess, containing the madness a little bit. And you have to keep wiping your brush on the paper towel. It feels like sometimes every 5 seconds. Because again, it's an oil paint and it will just keep going and going. Then we're going to come in and we're going to use, this is the rust color from that AK product line that I love so much. And again, this is self-leveling. So all we have to do here is get this painted in like a thick wash and we're just going to let it dry, and you'll see at the end, there's definitely more that you could do. But if you're just trying to, get a good coat and move on to the next thing, this product it's like cheating. It really is. And after trying a lot of different methods with rust, I don't know, this one seems like it's just the easiest, to be completely honest. I've seen people rust things and it looks a million times better, but this is just so easy. Now we're gonna come in, and I wanted to do a little bit something more on the track, something subtle. And so I'm just taking a gunmetal color, and we're just gonna really lightly dry brush the tracks to make them look, because I don't have a lot of mud or dirt on this vehicle. So I wanted to make it, have that appearance that it was driving on the road. Like it has been through mud, but maybe it's spent the last, I don't know, day or two on the road. And so we get that kind of sheen that you would get from the tracks scraping on, pavement or concrete or whatever. And then we came in super light with a little bit of pigment. Um, I probably, as well as everyone else, have the habit of putting too much pigment on, and then you spend a lot of time cleaning it up. I didn't want volume here. Again, I don't want the vehicle to look, totally dirty, but I just wanted another tone with that rust to kind of, you know, again, break up that monotony. So going super light with the pigment or with the pigment product here. This was also, even though it's a huge kit, there's a lot of tight spaces. And if you watched my video on the Comet, there's a really good method for cleaning up pigments, but it doesn't work if you don't have big wide open spaces. So I wanted to make sure I didn't have, too much cleanup work to do here. Once we have that done, I come in with the odorless enamel thinner again, and we're basically just wetting all of the areas that we put pigment. This definitely works as a pigment fixer. I will say it doesn't adhere the pigment as well as the pigment fixer. The pigment fixer almost makes it so you cannot take the pigment off without like a sponge or something. This allows you to clean it up much easier with really only the sacrifices that you can clean it up too much. So you have to be a little bit careful, I think, if you use the enamel thinner as that adhesion. I'm trying to be really careful here because, again, I want the pigment to sit in really like crevices here. I don't want it to sit on big wide open spaces. So obviously, like, there you go. I touched the big wide open space a little bit, but just trying to be really careful so that when I come back and clean it up, those other spaces clean up really well. And this is the final product that you are left with. I forgot to film, but I did use a dry brush once that pigment fixed to the vehicle, just to clean it up out of, again, those big wide open spaces, and just to get a basic little dirty look. Now, I wish the vehicle was a little bit more sturdy and that we could have done more to it. It was like I was just starting to get into that weathering rhythm and start having fun with it. And things just started not working well. Things started breaking and it just became really fragile. And I looked and I said, hey, it's good enough. I'll build another Tiger in my life. I'll probably build 20. So let's call it quits before, we break something like an antenna that I can't fix properly. And let's just be done with this one. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you've made it this far, I'd please ask you, if you haven't already, to obviously like and subscribe to the channel. We'll be doing many more model builds, painting videos, weathering, things like that. We are going to get into some aircraft very shortly here. I did have to kind of mix around videos and things because of the release of the Tamiya kit, so the H39, so things did get pushed back like this. But I'm overall happy with the way it turned out. This is an amazing kit. There are some negatives to it, but at the end of the day, it's not a $60 kit. It's basically half that price, and you're getting a metal gun barrel. You're getting really nice accessories that you don't normally see in a kit, and you're getting a lot of different options for how to build it. And then most of all, it's got Zimmerit molded into it. And you're getting all that for half the price of another kit that would come with these things. I obviously spent money on the aftermarket tracks, but there's no fit issues on this kit, really. The issues come from the directions. I said this before. Takom directions, in my opinion, feel like they were written by AI. They're really, really good, but there's like one or two mess ups where you're kind of like, how did that get past quality control? That's my personal opinion. Again, for the money, this kit it's pretty amazing. Uh, it doesn't have really much photo etch outside of those grills. At least I didn't use anything else photo etch wise. But there are some, vague spots in the instructions, and there are quite a few breakable pieces on this kit. So it's a perfect Tiger, in my opinion. It's an amazing kit. It's just a little bit difficult to weather. But I'd love to hear, kind of other people's experiences. If you've built this kit, it doesn't have to be this exact one. Tiger or Takom, I think, has like 6 other Tigers at this point that come with Zimmerit. Early, mid, and late productions. There's an auto Carius edition. There's a bunch. So would love to hear your opinions. I do read and respond to all comments and things like that. But that's the end of the Tiger 1. And overall, again, happy with it. And I appreciate, anyone who watched this video. And we have the H39 painting. I think we'll probably release around the same time as this, where we're doing 2 kits at once. And we're going to start on, like I said, some aircraft. So we'll see you on the next video. And thanks again for watching.